Thank you for dropping by this video. It's going to be a short tuning in gathering. If you're new to this channel, you're like, what's tuning in? You can read a little bit more about it in the description below or in the chat box to the side. People have been saying no sound. No sound. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Oh my heavens. Thanks everyone for letting me know. I was going to talk a little bit and then read the comments, but uh, okay, so well, welcome one and all. Thank you for saying hi, Robert, Mirth 666, Lapishy Rose, long time no. Marison, hello, and thank you everybody for letting me know. So I was just talking about an experience of going to church this morning. And thanks to the teachings of Bruno Groening, I can literally go to any church, religion, spiritual gathering, and I won't necessarily agree with or believe everything they say, but I can always find some wisdom and some truth, unless it's like really bad stuff, in which case I wouldn't go. And that's been a profound healing, because before Bruno's teachings, I had such resentment and judgment towards organized religion. And I couldn't connect with it. But now when I go, like for example, when I went to church this morning, I tune in the whole time. I just close my eyes, have the intention to experience the divine presence, and I listen. But I listen differently now. I don't go to church to have them sort of tell me the truth or to instruct me. I go now for inspiration. And, Bruno taught that we need to learn the art of discerning one thought at a time, whether it's a good thought. Because we human beings go throughout our day and there's like thought. Maybe we get a 5-second pause, then thought. And so Bruno was very adamant that we need to learn to check each thought and determine whether or not it's true or good or helpful. And so a big part of this path is learning that art and starting to do it, starting to listen to our thoughts and to apply discernment. And so, for me, this doesn't just apply to thoughts. It also applies to things that other people say. So, for example, in church this morning, I listened, and to the best of my ability, with each sentence I heard, I would feel, does that feel true to me? Yes. Oh, no, I don't agree with that, but that's okay. That's their belief. Yes. That one feels half true. Kind of this process of conscious listening, of discernment. And from that place, I was able to glean so much wisdom from the sermon, from the church itself. Even the songs are so beautiful, and to sing is so lovely and so heart-opening. And thanks to Bruno, I feel very secure in what I believe, and so I can tolerate when someone has a different belief than me. And that in and of itself has been very profound. To not feel the need to object to everything I don't agree with. Internally, I'll, very firmly say no to that which I don't believe is true. But yes, it was so profound in the sermon this morning. The deacon sermon was about, well, why did God create us? And gave an answer that is very, very in line with what Bruno taught. And I'm having minor technical difficulties today. My sound, my battery is about to run out. So I'm going to go plug in. And all of you can tune in for a moment while I go plug my battery. It should just be like 30 seconds. So, as I was saying, the minister this morning, or the deacon, talked about, well, what's the meaning of life? Why did God make us? It's a great question. And in this particular denomination, the answer, they have a very clear answer to that. God made us so that we can come to know God, come to love God, and be of service to God. And such a sweet answer. And so, and from my point of view, very much in line with what Bruno taught. That we're on this immense spiritual journey to come to know truth and come to know our Maker, but also to help our neighbor. Bruno talked about how we need to free ourselves from evil so that we can then share with others how we became free and help them. It's kind of this beautiful image of Bruno Groening. He would often say, I offer my hand and help, or I offer a helping hand. So Bruno extended his helping hand to us, and hopefully we say yes, and we respond by taking hold of his hand. And then as we become more free, then we can offer a helping hand. Not in the exact same way as Bruno Groening did to us yet, because Bruno often pointed out that at some point in time, we would be able to do what he did. I can only report that he said it. It still boggles my mind. And this, of course, connects back to the idea of life as a school. That we're here to learn. Well, what are we here to learn? Well, as it was said in the church I went to this morning, very, very well, learning to know God. And not just know God with ideas, but in our direct experience, which can happen through tuning in. It did for me. The practice of tuning in has radically changed my understanding of God because of what I felt. That Bruno was correct, that God is goodness. Or I'll say, I'm convinced Bruno was correct. God is goodness. I'm going to take a peek at some of the comments. Merson, hello. Merson, hello from Poland. Welcome. Chris, I hope the sound is working for other people, Chris. I'm not sure what's going on. Hi, thanks for saying hi. Marson so beautifully said, when we are led by the infinite light, we needn't take everything blindly. I would add to that, or take anything blindly. Beautifully said. Beautifully said, Marison. Before Bruno Groening and his teachings, I'd studied so many books and done so many spiritual practices, but I felt like I didn't really know anything, or I wasn't really convinced. I was convinced in my mind of certain things, and then that conviction would be changed by the next conviction. But once I found Bruno's teachings, I became convinced of some things, and I won't say 100%. That's not quite accurate. There's still moments of struggle or doubt, or things get refined a little bit, but I don't think there's anything that could really convince me that there's something that is incurable, or that God is limited, or that God is anything other but goodness. Those are things I've really become convinced of, and it is a journey. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Bruno said, I've convinced myself of the truth, and I'm busy convincing myself further. So even for someone like Bruno Groening, there's still a deepening, an ongoing learning, discovering, opening. I don't know what it was like for him, because he seemed pretty convinced. It seemed like he really knew. So the last thing I'll share, well, I say the last thing. Another thing, we'll see what happens next. Another thing I'll share is this person, the deacon who gave the sermon this morning, offered a beautiful vision of what is the purpose of marriage. He said the purpose of marriage is for, I'm going to say what he said, then I'll share a little more, is for the husband to lead the wife to heaven, and the wife to lead the husband to heaven. And then he was a male, so he said, and I think my wife has the harder job. But let's extend this beyond husband and wife or matrimony, or what is the purpose of relationship of any kind, of any connection? And so it really got me thinking that the purpose of connecting in any way, shape, or form between two people, that it needs to be sacred. Now, that doesn't mean we need to sit down and meditate together, though that can be nice when that happens. But it's like, why hang out with another person, much less get into a relationship or get married? What comes to me is so that we can support each other on this spiritual journey, so that we can help each other to find God, to grow. That doesn't mean that you can't get together and have fun. In my view, fun is an essential, healthy part of life. And in fact, Bruno Groening said, once you've lost your sense of humor, you've lost everything. But over time, through this practice and through studying Bruno's teachings, the quality of my connections and friendships and romantic relationships has changed. I specifically look for connections that are spiritually nourishing. And again, that doesn't mean, we just sit around and only talk about using spiritual language. But I specifically look for connections that are that don't feel separate from my spiritual practice, from this life journey of growing. And I don't know that I quite have the words. Maybe I'll say more about it later. I'm struggling a little to put it in words. I have the feeling of like, let relationships be sacred, or let their purpose be to deepen the sacred in our lives. And that can just be as simple as caring for each other. And I feel like I need to reflect a little more. The words aren't coming. I can feel it so clearly. So Bruno once said, be good, but don't be too good. And that's an interesting teaching. Don't be too good. And one thing that means to me is to take the spiritual path seriously, but don't lose my sense of humor, and take the spiritual path seriously, but again, live a balanced, healthy life. And because it's easy for me anyway, to get locked into ideas of what is the good, to come up with like a checklist of like, this is good, this is good, this is good, and this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Wherein Bruno called us to be led by God, to moment by moment be guided, to live a little more in the flow, as they say. So I think that's all I have for now. And let's sit for a minute or two, and then we'll see what happens next. I'm noticing some comments from Marson. Marson wrote, our hearts are 100% convinced, but our minds, our ego make us having doubts. I disagree that our hearts are 100% convinced. I think it depends each person where they are on the path. And I would also, I don't know. I don't really resonate with that. And again, what Bruno said, I have convinced myself of the truth, and I'm busy convincing myself further. So I don't know that, I'll just speak for myself. I'm not 100% convinced. I have moments of doubt and questioning, but maybe more to the point, Bruno himself said that he was convinced, yet he was convincing himself further. So I don't don't know that that's really accurate. And let's see the other thing. Connections between two human beings are like primary school. On the highest level, we will get to know the connection of all of us. Well, again, if you view it that way, that's okay. I disagree that connections between two human beings are like primary school. I'd say they're more like getting your doctorate. To be in relationship with other people. Well, first, let me go to what Bruno said. Bruno said, I want you all to learn to love yourselves. I want love to flow. I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the exact words. Love to flow in between people. And he also pointed out that sometimes, if we have a unharmonious relationship in a past life, that we'll encounter that person again in this life so that we have the opportunity to make better choices. So I don't really resonate with the idea that it's primary school. However, the second piece that for me, it's ongoing learning, and especially when it comes to group projects, learning to work together with people with different opinions or a different perspective on how to proceed. However, the second thing that you wrote, on the highest level, we will get to know the connection of all of us. I don't know about highest level, but Bruno did speak about the need to see the divine in other human beings. And it's one of my favorite quotes of Bruno's, and I'm going to have to paraphrase it because I don't have it handy. He said, "Look for the divine in other human beings and see it more and more. Cherish it more. And in that way," again, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the exact words, "and in that way, you can find connection with God always." I don't have the exact words. So yeah, Marison, I respect that those are your views. They don't necessarily speak to my experience or exactly what Bruno teaches. In my understanding. Now Andy is onto it. And here's the topic at hand. How do you learn to accept difficult people? Bruno is helping, but I still have some reactivity. If you just have some reactivity, then you're doing great. I remember someone who had been a long time very devoted to Bruno Groening's teachings. And there was this one person who would go to the community hour that they were a regular at. And this person just pushed their buttons. And this person who's very devoted, very knowledgeable about Bruno's teachings, said that they said, "This person is going to lead me to mastery." Because that reactivity that Andy is speaking of, which I experience, which pretty much everybody experiences, which is why I disagree with what you wrote, Marson, unless you're a master and you don't, or, unless you've mastered peace, which I haven't, that reactivity and how to handle that reactivity, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where it gets interesting, because it's very easy to be peaceful, like all by yourself, right? Meditating alone in the forest. But then we have to walk out of the forest. And in fact, here's a funny story that happened in church this morning that speaks to this. So on the way to church, so I pulled in and I started walking to go enter the church, and me and this other person were walking towards each other. And from a little bit of a distance, I said, "Good morning," like this, "Hi, good morning." I didn't know the person. And then as the person got closer, they were like, "Oh, sorry." And they like slowed down, the idea that like somehow they were in my way. And I didn't feel that way at all. I was just happy to say hi to a stranger. And I was like, it's okay. And then I just went my way. And then they kind of followed behind me, and they were hesitant. Um, and then they walked in front of me, but then they hesitated. It was like this odd little interaction. And I didn't have a big reaction to it, but it was a little unsettling of like, what is this for a couple minutes? I was like, what was that person thinking? And why did they feel bad? And I was just happy to say hi. And so, it took me 5 minutes I didn't get upset, but that's exactly, I think exactly what Andy was referring to, and exactly what this Bruno Groening friend I was talking about is other people push our buttons, but it's so we can learn. And the lesson that came to me is I can't take things personally. Like maybe the person was having a bad morning. Uh, maybe, I'd never been to that church. Maybe they were scared of a stranger. I was much taller than them. Maybe they found that, I don't know. But regardless, I kind of took it on and started to worry a little bit like, oh my gosh, did I do something wrong? What's the matter with this person? And it robbed me of a little peace. So I got back to center, but that's the learning that happens. It doesn't even have to be a relationship. It can just be a stranger, and how to not react to the reaction. So thank you for bringing that up, Andy. And Chris, abusive people can be extremely dangerous for your health. I don't disagree. And uh, we all have a deep journey of just going back, this idea of learning to monitor each thought, not monitor, but check each thought. Well, that also has to do with activities and relationships. And not all relationships are meant to be. And yes, and learning to discern when something is harmful. You know, Bruno spoke about good and evil often, but we have this kind of worldly connotation of what good and evil is. Well, my understanding, and part of this is based on Alfred Hosp, who was a friend, knew Bruno directly, is that evil is that which harms life and that which pulls us away from God. And yes, it has a metaphysical component as well. But that which is harmful is, and some relationships are very harmful on multiple levels and can drag us off the spiritual path. For those of you who know my story, I was very devoted to Bruno, and I still am, but I was living in miracles, but I didn't have discernment, and I let a relationship pull me off. And I understand that I needed to learn discernment, and I've gotten a lot better at it. Yeah. All right, dear ones, let's tune in for another minute or two, and then we'll have a closing prayer. So, beloved, our beloved maker, our dear friend Bruno, please, for everyone who attended this live, and please, for everyone who watches this video, please, for this YouTube channel connected work, please, for all the people and organizations sharing Bruno Groening's teachings, please, for all the friends of Bruno Groening. And according to Bruno, he said, once I've made contact with a soul, that connection is never broken. So for all the friends of Bruno Groening, please, for everyone who's striving for the good, there's so many ways and paths to do that. And please, for those people who are temporarily lost, who don't believe in the good, who aren't trying, or are currently unable to try. Bruno pointed out that it takes a certain amount of energy to even take in the divine energy. Please, for those people who are temporarily really stuck or temporarily spiritually lost, please, blessing, grace, and mercy. Bruno, you spoke about the great turnaround for this planet, as it's spoken of in the Bible, that one day all problems, all evil will leave this world, be banished. Please help us to believe in, trust in that sacred promise. Help us to trust in the divine power, in our Maker. Please help us to be guided, to seek connection to God and be guided by God. And please help us to stay humble, to recognize that we need God and nature. It's very easy in this day and age to rely on technology, which certainly has its place and benefits, but is no replacement for our Maker and for nature. Please help us to listen deeply, to discern which of our own thoughts are true and good, and which of the spoken or written word of other people is true and good. I'll leave some silent time right now, inwardly asking for your personal prayers, personal requests. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So after gatherings like this, Bruno invited people to sit in silence and continue to take in the energy and to listen deeply within themselves, to listen to God, whom he said lives within each one of us. So I'll say a few closing words, and then I invite people on their own to, as it were, stay in the energy and listen deeply within themselves. I'd like to thank everyone who joined in. I'd like to thank people who said hello and participated so beautifully. I do this work free of charge. If you feel inspired to share a donation with me, I very much appreciate it. You can read more on my website. I put the link in the chat box. And I wish everyone a God-guided, a God-filled, and a joyous, balanced day of learning how to live in harmony with nature, in harmony with our Maker, and in harmony with each other. Many, many blessings. I wish you a beautiful day. To everyone who said thank you, you're so welcome. And yes, I agree with Marcin. Let it be. Take care.